Check 1, 2. Hey, yeah, Tom, Jimmy Eat World Redemption episode. We have got to go. We have got to groove and move and lose it and caboose it. And this is a sloppy start. Let's just run the music.
What is going on, everybody? I'm Tom.
And I'm Pat.
We're best friends, and you're listening to the Reminiscent Podcast. Something like that is what Jack Black said. Lucid.
It was like
caboose
three
it.
different things at once. It was the Saturday morning coffee's wearing off. How are you, man?
I'm okay. I'm getting ready for vacation. Stoked to try to redeem ourselves on the Jimmy Eat World episode. We did that survey a few months ago, and one of the questions was like, what is your least favorite episode and why? And I forget who said it, but they were like, the Futures episode, and you know why.
Yes, and we do know why. And here's what we're going to do to earn one step. It's a 7-step process. That's an arbitrary number, but let's call it 7. And here's step 1. We're going to talk about by far their most popular song and just say nice things about it. And that's really what today's going to be. Got a few anecdotes. Buckle up for some nostalgia. And that's it. You know, we're going to say the goofy voices, do the seatbelt stuff, buckle up for some things, some memories. Jimmy Eat World's going to be involved. But that's what we're going to get. You know, the middle is a song by Jimmy Eat World. You want to do fast facts? You want to do some memories? How are you feeling? How's your tummy? What's up, man?
Man, I'm okay. It's been a hell of a morning. We're just kind of cramming this into some errands that we both have to run on either end, so we might try to keep it a little tight. Apologies again. We're trying to redeem ourselves and also trying to cram it into our day.
Here's step 1 of phase 1 or whatever it is. Tom was like, I don't know Jimmy Eat World that well. I'm like, okay, do you know the middle? He's like, is that the one where it's like in the middle of the... I'm like, yes, everybody knows that song. So I think you were given the business to the Academy recently, recently, and Chris Lukey on Twitter, one of our followers, said, more episodes where Tom just actively hates the band we're talking about. So you have a small fan club. You have the floor, though. You have a hot mic. Do you care to dispel any rumors that you may or may not hate Jimmy Eat World, or is it more of an indifference or lack of knowledge situation? And tell the good people who weren't there with us when we tried to do a Futures album episode, maybe fill in some backstory for the folks who have recently joined the pod following. Sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even indifference. It's just like, I did not listen to Jimmy Eat World. When we did the Futures episode, we were trying to celebrate its like 15-year anniversary, and we were both listening to it for the very first time, I think, just a few days before we hit record. I thought the opening track was amazing, and the rest was just like, it was fine. Like, I just felt like it was totally fine. And we kind of laid down this episode talking about Pitchfork, gave it a 3 out of 10 or whatever, made a t-shirt. And I don't even think like our review was even that lukewarm. It was just kind of like, yeah, it's a great album. I mean, because the whole point of this show is how we connected with these songs as teenagers and how much it's impacted us. And to me, Jimmy Eat World has not impacted me at all. I just never listened. I didn't have friends who listened. No one cornered me at the youth camp and begged me to listen to it. So I've got nothing. But I do like it. They're a good band.
Yeah. There's Emo OGs. One of my favorite books, through the lens of the show anyway, is Nothing Feels Good by Andy Greenwald. Took an early stab at writing about emo. Wasn't the only one, but it's a good one. He spends a lot of time on Jimmy Eat World, some of their early touring days and things like that. One of your exes, Hannah, turned several people in our friend group onto Clarity, which came out, I believe, in 99, which, along with Pinkerton and some of the Sunny Day Real Estate stuff, is considered to be one of, as far as I can understand the situation, to be one of the OG emo albums. More or less a commercial flop, but beloved by many. And, the people who, talk about emo, think about emo, whatever. Clarity's important, and it's great. And we chose to talk about Futures, which we knew nothing about. So we were like loosely had an idea of the whole story behind Clarity. What's interesting as we kind of set up this episode and before we just dive into the music video and Fast Facts, Cole, one of our Twitter followers, recently was like, hey, what's your favorite comeback album? And a lot of people were talking on Twitter about that, and it was just like a nice day. And we never want to Eric Alper it up too much on Twitter or whatever. No offense to Eric Alper, whatever. But, just kind of those general questions. But what's interesting is one of our listeners suggested Green by Weezer was a comeback album that they liked. And that came after Pinkerton. And talking about Bleed American today, I wonder if it was a comeback of sorts or if it counts based on what Cole was talking about. He referenced Save Rock and Roll by Fall Out Boy, and there was a variety of answers on Twitter, but through the lens of this episode specifically, coming off of Clarity, we're going to get into the Fast Facts in a minute, but it seems like the band members were just working odd jobs, trying to scrape together enough cash to even put out another record. And then they put out fucking Bleed American, and, the quote-unquote hit, there was several, but the middle took over. I mean, you think back to some of the 90s, maybe late 90s or early 2000s, but as we acknowledged in the My Friends Over You Newfound Glory episode, the dream of the 90s was alive until at least 2002. So, yeah, you think of, mood rings and all that, and Third Eye Blind and lyrics and stuff about kids and skating parties, and you're just like, the middle is kind of there in your head, for better or worse, as a song from the 90s that you were alive to kind of take in, even though it came out in '01. But, we were in middle school, and it all kind of starts to blur together for a little bit. But the sounds of the turn of the century, so to speak, turn of the millennium. Thoughts on it being a comeback album? Thoughts on one of our musical Sherpas, your ex Hannah, being a big proponent of Clarity? Any, just general thoughts on the situation, or just being a kid and definitely having heard the middle on the radio.
Yeah, I mean, when I think of Jimmy Eat World, I think of the Wonder Years, because they, in one of their songs on the 7-inch, I think it was like Solo and Chewy, something or other, there's a line where Soupy says, I guess that's what the last song on Clarity is about. And that's like my knowledge of the album Clarity. I know everyone loves it. It wasn't super successful at the time, but it turned into like a late cult favorite, I guess. And with the middle itself, it's really, really weird, because I have no distinct memories of ever hearing this song. Like, obviously, I heard it a million times. I'd probably just being in 5th grade, which was 2001 for us. I think we were both in 5th grade. And the radio was just always on somewhere. I've heard this song a billion times, and I always really loved it. But like at that age, there was a disconnect between like what you hear on the radio is like actual physical people in bands who are making music. So it was just this sound that was served to me, but I never thought to like figure out who the band was and what have they done. And just too young to really fully understand what music even is.
Well, that's what's interesting is I don't know how old people think we are.
Yeah, we're both 30.
But, right. So,
well, at this point, you're probably 31.
We were not old enough to like listen to Bleed American and be like, this makes everything on this thing makes sense to me now, currently.
Right.
We're 11 and this is my shit. That's not how it went down, right? So a couple of anecdotes. Well, I used the jokey voice earlier, buckle up for some anecdotes, but I got two to kind of put context into my like Jimmy Eat World fandom. Late high school, Hannah told you and I, whoever was like around, Tyler, Ashley, whatever. Yeah. Clarity is something that needs to be consumed by everyone who is alive. And some of us listened, some of us didn't. So that was my entry into the band, like knowledge of the band. Then I found out the middle was them. I was like, oh, gotcha. Okay, I'm starting to piece this shit together. Around that time, early high school, late junior high, realizing that like Blink-182 wasn't just like, you grow up listening to your dad's classic rock on the radio and everything like that. You're like, oh, ZZ Top. They're not going to like be pumping out top 40 hits or whatever necessarily. But like, you're like, oh, Blink came out with Miss You in a self-titled album and it's happening now. I'm caught up. So it's kind of crazy. Anyway, I remember being at Cedar Point as like a kid when the middle would have been playing over their like loudspeaker system. Like my dad used to write us a sick note for school in the spring, back when he would look up the attendance numbers throughout the year at Cedar Point, find the lowest date in the early spring. And then,
yes, man.
And we would go and we'd literally run from ride to ride and ride the entire park before lunch. Like his plan would be too good. So like he would have us, over the years, we'd learned to not eat breakfast because our bodies would be like 360'd so much before lunch that like it was no point even trying to put food inside of them. So we'd just be exhausted and go take a quick nap in the car at lunch and come back and ride some of the like smaller coasters or whatever. But you hit the Raptor, you walk onto the Manus like 3 times and just be like, damn, this was well researched and well executed. That's like one of the many aspects of my dad that I admire. He would just like, you know, he plays stupid, but he's like, oh, I want to be good at this thing. I'll just read a book and like get better at it. He's like a great gardener. He's like, has had a ton of hobbies. And one of those hobbies was like, how can I get the most joy per dollar at Cedar Point on like a somewhat rainy day in March or May, I guess.
If you hit that place, because I've gone in summer and I have waited 3.5 hours for the Top Thrill Dragster.
He's not about that life. He's not. Yeah. He's all about the return on your time, whatever.
Totally.
So we'd go in May-ish and be like maybe April, and you just when it opened, you'd be testing the weather a little bit if you know Northern Ohio or Northwestern PA at all off the lake, and you'd try to get a day that was a little overcast so people would be scared away from the park, and you just run the place basically. Anyway, we're in a small line for the Raptor right at the beginning of the park. If you follow our listener Chris Lukey on Twitter, he recently over the summer saw the Raptor and took a video of it. It's a beautiful coaster where your feet dangle. Anyway, Jimmy Eat World, the middle came on him. He's like, my dad was like kind of intrigued. You know, it was like a rock band on the radio, which throughout the 90s and 2000s, you know, I don't think there was like a fucking overload, right, of that. So, you know, you could like R&B and pop and whatever exploded. You watched the pop documentary on Netflix more than I did, but you know, the 90s and 2000s, like we talk about the emo stuff, but there's obviously a way more deeper, richer musical like legacy of like, you know, pop in general happening over these 20 years. Anyway, he heard guitars and was like, oh, who's this? I'm like, oh, I think they're like a one-hit wonder. I'm like 11. I don't know shit. So that's like the beginning of the disrespect that I've been giving Jimmy Eat World throughout the years. Fast forward to Clarity. I'm like, oh, that's them. I immediately remembered this and was like, I lied to my dad like 7 years ago. Because not only was this not a one-hit wonder, they had 2 of the best albums I'd hear in my lifetime at that point, let alone they had released Futures by this point in high school when I had started listening to some of this stuff. Fast forward to a girlfriend in college where I was interning at a newspaper in Columbus, and I would take her car to go to work one of the days and come back and hang out in Athens just to like have a good time because, you know, you'd show up for work, but I was rooming with some Ohio State students at the time and they were fun and they were really nice guys. But, you know, anyway, I would have rather been with my friends at OU or whatever. So I'd come home on the weekends and maybe on some weeknights I'd wake up at like 5 a.m. from my house on campus and she'd go to class and then I'd drive to Columbus to work. It would be like a 2-hour commute, right? And she was way cooler than me. She had a much better taste in music, introduced me to like, for example, like I wouldn't have just wandered through life and like discovered Tegan and Sarah on my own, for example. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
introduced me to that type of shit. You referenced like when you and I split in high school and I went more into the indie, whatever.
Yeah.
There were Sherpas along the way. This was not me finding these things on my own at all. Anyway, she had Bleed American in her car. And I guess this is a roundabout way of saying like in that Cedar Point line, I'm like, oh yeah, they're just like a lesser Third Eye Blind or something. That's what 11-year-old me thought. But the more I listened to Bleed American, and I was so wrong. I'm not saying, you know, like obviously the point of the story is I'm a fucking idiot. But listening to Bleed American at like 5 a.m. from Athens to Columbus, driving up, I think it's State Highway, and it's not 50, it's 33 maybe. Anyway, just driving like a ridiculously long commute that, you know, college kids, you can just drive forever. Like you don't have to sleep. It's amazing. But yeah, I was listening. And track 1 comes in so hot, and and you know, Sweetness at track 5. There's like this weird raw energy, and they're kind of pissed. Like there's kind of like you feel like they're pissed. Clarity should have done better, and you know they'd soon find out it's a cult hit or whatever. But like when Weezer made Green, there's more of a like Beach Boysy. He wanted to do that 4-chord beat. You know, Rivers Cuomo basically wants to have been in the Beach Boys. That's like his whole life mission, essentially. So Green was really polished. There's like this meme a few years ago that came out, this YouTube video that was like SpongeBob memes for each Weezer album. Green for them was like when SpongeBob rounds out his edges so that his friends will like him more. He's like, I am not weird anymore. I rounded out. You know, and Rivers Cuomo retweeted it because that's how it felt for him. Anyway, I would think Bleed American differs as far as comeback albums go in the sense that they seem kind of pissed, you know. Track 1, they're coming in hot. Jim's a sweaty boy, as we'll get into when we talk about the music video and everything like that. But it's almost like the middle doesn't quite fit on the record. It's a tremendous hit, and it does, but it's kind of a nasty, angry little record that rocks super hard. And I guess I'm getting ahead of myself. Should we just kind of transition to the fast facts to help us tell the story and kind of build the narrative a little better? But my fandom was warped and stupid, and I needed help is the main point of this story. But when you go into the record, you're like, wow, the middle really is surrounded by a much different tone. In a vacuum, it sounds like a pop song in an amusement park, but that is obviously so not the story of Jimmy Eat World, and I'm really glad that people literally held my hand along the way to help me out with that, with the story of the band in general.
Yeah, no, that's funny to think like one-hit wonders, because I've definitely had that before too. God, it'll come to me throughout the episode of bands that I thought just had the one song. I even saw a poll, it might have been on Reddit. It was like, what's your favorite one-hit wonder? And like, I don't know. Is Fountains of Wayne a one hit? Anyway, there were like 3 bands in there that absolutely had more than one big hit. But it's kind of embarrassing to like go years thinking they were just a one-trick pony, and they were like one of the biggest bands ever.
Like, that's not in the top tier of things that I'm embarrassed about at night when I'm laying in bed. But it's like, it's not non-existent in the psyche for sure. Let's start rolling through these a bit. Fun facts, not fast, because there's a few more. So this week they're fun. Important distinction. I hope you're still buckled up though for the anecdotes. Keep your arms and legs inside, whatever, et cetera, et cetera. They're from Arizona. They're from Mesa. Formed in '93. I think the earliest date we've mentioned on the show for a band. This is definitely some of the early OG emo stuff. Usually we're a little
Green
more
Day, maybe, but
yeah, no, you're right.
It's pretty early though. It's pretty early.
We will mention some of those acts soon.
Oh.
Anecdote on Wikipedia. I have no reference for whether this is correct, but apparently the name came from one of the band member Linton's younger brothers. His younger brothers' names were Jim and Ed. They fought frequently. Jim usually won, but Ed sought revenge by drawing a picture of Jim, the brother, shoving the earth into his mouth. Just a little kid's drawing, and the picture bore the caption Jimmy Eat World. And as the story goes, allegedly, that's kind of how the band name was born.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so Clarity in '99 was their third studio album with Capitol. They departed in late '99. Adkins has said that the label situation was a mess. Drummer Zach Lind has said he didn't feel they were believed in. There's a lot of, I guess, they weren't loving the label. They weren't loving Capitol at the time, as the story goes, due to a lack of funds. Again, as the story goes, if you listen to the show, you know that we don't exactly like interview the band members. We're just going off of stuff that's like pretty readily Googleable. But, working odd jobs. They weren't like thriving. They were doing a little touring. It sounds like Adkins was selling art supplies. Linton did some construction work. Birch sold auto parts, car dealership stuff.
Damn, grinding.
Yeah, for real. Pulling money together to get back into the studio.
Jesus.
And they weren't nobodies, right? Like, they were coming off, like, Capitol released Clarity. Like, it was a major release, right? So, like, they weren't just like this garage band that nobody knew about. But it was kind of a make or break moment, so to speak, in their careers. But they ended up in a recording studio with Mark Trombino, a name we mentioned on the show.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Sure.
Often, what would you say?
Yeah, I mean, he comes up. I think his stuff is probably more earlier generations of the genre we talk about, but he is definitely one of the big players in production of this, of this scene.
Yeah. So this was November 2000 at the Cherokee and Hard Drive Studios in Los Angeles. The phrase from Wikipedia that made me want to reference Weezer's in this episode in a more relevant way than other times when I force Weezer into the conversation. But it says the musical style was more direct compared to Clarity and accessible with simpler chord structures and things like that. So you think about Rivers on Green just being cute. Just Island in the Sun was written with a broader audience in mind, I think it's safe to say. So, but The Middle is a result of this process, this grind, came out in November 2001. Around that time, they appeared on East Coast. Like, again, they were touring, but they were in and around the Warped Tour situation on the East Coast, supporting bands like Blink and Weezer. But, The Middle drops. They're coming out with a new effort. It's time to see what happens. And they soon found themselves headlining European tours as soon as 2002, followed by a Japanese tour. Bleed American is, basically like shot out of a cannon, so to speak. Like, they kind of were just like, oh, it's picking back up. No more art supplies for Jim. 2-month supporting slot for Blink and Green Day on their Pop Disaster Tour, which I think you and I, when we were at your mom's house, used to watch like a little mini tour doc from that. Did you even realize Jimmy was on that bill?
No, I think that's the one that Riding in Vans with Boys was. There was Cut You Up was like touring, playing the parking lots of that tour, and they did a documentary. And I remember downloading clips from that documentary on LimeWire, and that was the first time I ever heard First Date was from that documentary.
Yeah, I remember. I'm like, man, these dudes are hilarious, because there's that one joke in that mini tour doc. It's mostly about Green Day and Blink kind of pop punk taking over the world or whatever was kind of the narrative of that 15-minute little thing. But they were like, hey guys, you're going on tour, and if in case you're forgetting anything, these are the members of the band. And it's like the three of them standing in front of a cardboard cutout of the three of them. This is Mark, this is Tom, this, So we thought those guys were hilarious. Anyway, blissfully unaware, I suppose, that Jimmy was on that bill, which is pretty amazing when you think about it.
Yeah. Damn, what a tour. Jesus.
Right? Pop disaster.
I'm glad that we grew up with the era of music that we did, but if I could change one thing about history, I would want to be old enough to go to that tour and appreciate it, because that's insane.
It's weird because the Gen Xer people are like, oh, it was delightful having grunge hit when I was in college or Pearl Jam or whatever. And I'm like, man, we weren't in college when our favorite bands hit necessarily. Like if we were college radio age when that tour would have been happening, it's almost like that would have been the sweet spot. I don't regret anything. It was weirder and makes this show at least more interesting and weird and strange and fun that we were in high school during the neon era of emo necessarily. So it's kind of interesting to kind of dig through kind of the OG stuff, kind of the more, or maybe not OG, but middle ground Jimmy Eat World stuff heading into the turn of the millennium or whatever. But anyway, Bleed American was the Four Pieces commercial breakthrough, I think it goes without saying. 4 singles that charted in the top 20 positions of the alternative songs chart. The Middle reached number 1 on that chart. It became the band's biggest single to date, reaching number 5 on the Billboard Hot 100, which explains why I was waiting in line for a ride at Cedar Point and heard it. And it's probably why it's a Jimmy Eat World song you're aware of as well.
Yeah, the thing that I find really interesting about this album, and everyone calls it Bleed American, and at the time of recording, we're a week away from September 11th, the 20th anniversary of the attacks and stuff. And this came out right beforehand. And then quickly Jimmy Eat World was like, I don't know if people will be offended by this. So then they just changed it to self-titled. And it's interesting how people just still call it Bleed American. I mean, obviously time has passed. I don't know if anyone really was offended by it or anything, trying to tread lightly around this situation, this discussion. But
yeah, I don't think we're not the pod that's going to launch into necessarily the politics of the situation, but from a music standpoint specifically,
it's
regardless of the American narrative at the time and regardless of what's happening, in the last several months or whatever, I can see why the band might have wanted to steer clear of,
right.
I mean, the Dixie Chicks ran over some CDs with a thing almost heroically, and we're you didn't hear from them for a decade. It was insane. So
yeah,
they were just maybe it's self-titled, but people know the name of the record now, I guess. A record that has been since certified platinum, mind you, by the RIAA. We don't talk about a ton of platinum records on this show, Tom.
Not many. And, I keep meaning to bring this up every single time we do this show, but we always talk about, that's All American Rejects numbers with one of their albums went quadruple platinum. We didn't even bring it up, but when we talked about Enema of the State, I think that thing went 11 times platinum or something.
Amazing. Yeah. Everyone's there's a reason, Blink ruled the world for a minute there, lest we forget. But yeah,
anyways,
the talking point joke on the show has become those are All American Rejects numbers, which is true. That band has been so successful. And we like them. Look, we like them.
Look, man.
Yeah, exactly.
They're a good band.
Anyway, yeah, there was a little bit of an album switch at the time. So, it was known as self-titled at the time, but in a sense, yeah, Bleed American is what people know it as. It's interesting. Wikipedia called the middle new wave-esque and includes a guitar solo that, according to Adkins, was an homage to Doug Gillard of Guided by Voices, another great Ohio band. So kind of interesting. Listening to the song, the solo does rip quite a bit. It's kind of putting guitars on the radio, and not even a tongue-in-cheek oh haha way. It's oh he's kind of they're getting after it a little bit. Thoughts on the solo kind of prematurely in the episode here, but yeah, it's not just a pop song necessarily. I guess it is, but thoughts on the guitars in the song a little bit before we dive into the video.
Yeah, it's not super common, or I guess it wasn't for a while, to hear solos like this. I also think it's interesting if you notice the guitar tone, it's not super driven. It's almost to me, it seems a little reminiscent of maybe a 60s era guitar solo. He's shredding, but it's not a metal tone or anything. It honestly reminds me, I think as a kid, I probably confused these two bands. It reminds me of Absolutely by, Story of a Girl. What band is that?
Something 9. 9 days or something.
Oh God, how do I not remember this? This is so embarrassing.
This is right in the wheelhouse. This is the part of your brain. We're in the part of your brain that would remember this.
Right. But anyways, it reminds me of that where they're absolutely shredding, but it's not this like super overdriven hard rock tone. It's almost like a little more like old America rock and roll type stuff. And I mean, this is like
This 9
isn't
days.
pop punk. It is a 9 days. Awesome. I can only remember 4 Year Strong's cover of it at this point after listening
Which
to
is
that
fantastic.
album so
you know what?
much.
Switching gears. We're going to talk about 4 Year Strong. It'd be like the Conan Walker Texas Ranger lever. There's a point in the episode where we just end up talking about 4 Year Strong for the rest of the episode, and it can come at any time.
But anyways, it rips. I mean, this song.
It's so good. It's rare to
Yeah.
find like it's tough to have all three. Like, well, one would be like a technically impressive solo, right?
Yeah.
Which you could speak to this more than I could in this particular instance. One that is like catchy and enjoyable as well, right? And 3 like fits the song
Right.
perfectly. Like
Yeah.
it's tough to have 2 out of 3 when you're dealing with rock songs that hit the main top 100 charts we talk about.
Right.
Rarely on the show. Often it's like, oh, they kind of forced that in. They just took a guitar break before hitting the chorus again.
Right.
And depending if Mark Hoppus is producing your record or not, it might be just reprise or like a softer chorus version for the bridge.
Right.
We do a little bit of bridge work, but the goal, I think, of maybe anyone who's ever held a guitar would to be able to write a solo that hits all 3 of those, or at least 2 out of 3. But this one is kind of the trifecta and is the right length, even though it's kind of long. And, it's like, whoa, he's fucking moving and grooving, but also my booty's still shaking a little bit. You know what I mean? Like this song,
Right.
it's just, sometimes it's a perfect song.
Something else that really stood out to me is when you kind of analyze like pop music, similar structure, you can find usually like in a chorus, maybe there'll be like an acoustic guitar that's layered in to add some texture. And a lot of what you'll hear is tambourines in the chorus just to keep things moving, add some of those higher frequencies, whatever. It's interesting that in this song, the tambourine is at the beginning in the first verse when things are still pretty low. I don't know why I always just associate a tambourine with like high energy choruses. So
Like when you're layering towards the end of a song to feel like it's more of a full band sing along thing or something.
yeah, kind of. So, I mean, this is like not a detail worth spending a lot of time on because it's not like that insane or anything, but it was just something that really stuck out to me. Like, oh, you don't hear a lot of tambourine in verses. That's kind of cool.
Yeah. Oh, very here for it. Why not? Why the hell not? Which might speak to the sing-alongy, dancey, approachable radio nature.
Yeah.
Again, it's a pretty, honestly, angst meter wise, the album is, turn it, the nozzle. I don't know. I'm getting lost in my own bullshit this week, but it's a pretty angsty record, but this song just is not. One more note for the fast facts. This isn't a fact so much, but it just speaks to a little bit of the lyrics, I guess. Adkins in interviews, this is probably obvious when you listen, but it's a fitting in self-acceptance, kind of anthem. I guess it was loosely inspired, maybe perhaps by an email from a fan who wrote that they felt that they weren't punk enough, which is not something you and I are ever curious about. We are aware we're not. But that is an interesting kind of context here. But definitely, what were we just talking about, Tom? Why would I have brought that up? Sorry, I got my brain's trying to crawl out of my own head today this week. So you're gonna have to help me.
The song was inspired by an email.
Oh, tambourines or something. Anyway, well, if anyone is holding a tambourine, you're not going to be unwelcome into their area.
Right.
I think is really what I'm going for. Like the tone of this song is just like, hey, tambourine. I think, it's definitely a message of you're invited to wherever that person said it.
Man, I've got 2 next to me right now. I'm tempted to.
No one's ever held a
start
tambourine and be
slamming.
like, no, off. You stay the away from me. No, that gypsy's
man.
definitely like, yeah, we got some, come on. I'm not going anywhere special, but you're invited. So I don't know what Disney movie let's get back on track. Let's get the back on track.
Hey everyone, I hope you're enjoying the episode, but allow me to quickly break in here, as is tradition, and thank our top tier Patreon supporters, our Council of Elders. In this group, we have Andre Prevost, Johnny Leftwich, Jason Carey, Anonymous, Chris Lukey, Nathan Eshelman, Drew Edwards, Carrie Sanchez, Melanie, and Devin Booz. Seriously, thank you all so much. Thank you to everyone in our Patreon who financially supports this show. We are dumping 100% of the money back into the show. We've been working on this massive art project for the past few months. Pat just got a new microphone. We've been reinvesting everything back so that this podcast can be better for everyone. So if you enjoy the show, thank the Patreon supporters. They've really been helping us out a lot. If you would like to support the show, you can head to patreon.com/reminiscent, where we post weekly post shows. This is like 10 or 15 minutes of extra content specifically and exclusively for the Patreon, behind the scenes photos, videos. All the Patreon supporters have already seen this art project a few weeks ahead of the public, so that's going on there. All kinds of exclusive content, photos, videos, stuff like that at patreon.com/reminiscent. Thank you all so much, and back to the episode. Let's talk about a couple nominations before we get into the video, which is a rather simple, very fun, very sweaty video. A couple nominations. That's my wheelhouse, being very sweaty.
Yeah, this is how I convinced Tom to do this episode. We're going to talk about sweaty boys.
Of which I am the sweatiest.
And Jim Adkins shares this in a very beautiful, endearing way because he lays it out there, but we're not there yet. Talk to me about numbers. Talk to me about hardware.
No, just a quick, couple things here. Nominated for MTV Video Music Award for Best Rock Video, Billboard Music Award for Modern Rock Track of the Year. Just I don't know if you said that already, but it's popping up again for me. Huge.
Yeah, well, it's fitting to mention the video as well because it's pretty straightforward because we talk about videos all the time, but we're like one of a few individuals who are just putting 2,000 videos under this much of a microscope. But it is a pretty good video, high production value, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of stuff about how the band.
I mean, there's The Reason by Hoobastank as far as full entertainment value, but it's pretty good, I guess. To be fair, though, just because you and I enjoy heist music videos more than any others does not mean that this is not a fine video. And we're about to expand on it.
Right. So the music video was directed by Paul Fedor, Fedor, and apparently when he pitched the idea to the band, they were pretty skeptical just to hear it's a bunch of people just in their underwear. And the band was worried that it would seem too we're just selling sex and maybe it's overcompensating because the song isn't good enough, so we need to have some sex appeal. And they said it was a huge leap of faith to actually allow him to go forward with this concept. And they ended up really, really pleased with it. I don't think.
Yeah, we'll end the episode with the final frame of the video, but
yeah.
But if you're just looking at the first few seconds and you had just come off Clarity and you were the college radio age at this time and you were watching this, the first minute you're like, this is a different band and I hate them. If you're kind of a snobby college radio age person at that point. Who maybe hadn't had a chance to listen to all of Bleed American at that point or something. I don't know. I'm trying to say you got to watch through the end to, I don't know, get the message.
Yeah, there's a greater purpose once you get to the end. It's not just a bunch of good looking people.
Yeah, we've come a long way
butts.
From just watch the fireworks or for me this is heaven or whatever. This isn't a 7-minute long thinker. It's definitely a pretty straightforward underwear jam for a house party. But let's talk about it.
It even fits the lyrics a little bit because the lyrics are real prose, simple. Hey, don't write yourself off just yet. It's just it's very simple. So I think it's very fitting.
Maybe he needed to hear it himself a little bit. These, I think if we learn anything just talking about these dudes so much, dudes and dudettes and etc., they all are very human. You hear it in pretty much every corner of society. You talk about athletes when they talk about how people in the stands say just the nastiest shit, and they're like, "Hey man, I got kids, man. Why don't you relax?" And these people have doubts, and if you come off how much Pinkerton or Clarity flopped commercially, and every person in your industry who measures these things said by the measurements we care about, this is bad.
Right.
And then you wait 20 years later and it's one of the most important cultural emo moments possible for so many people. So yeah, maybe they needed to hear this advice themselves a little bit. But It starts with a girl in a car pulling up to a house party.
I think this was a missed opportunity to play one of the band's other songs.
Oh, yeah.
I was
Sweetness
surprised.
or something. Yeah, interesting. Okay. Yeah, because usually we talked about it recently. I can't remember the video. But yeah, it's a trope we talk about. Yeah. Usually when a car is pulling up, they turn off the radio of a song of the band. Oh, it was the Academy Is episode.
It was a lot of episodes.
Yeah, it was a lot of it. But they don't do that here. They're playing. There's noise coming out of this house. I don't know if it's a house in Arizona necessarily, probably filmed in California or whatever, but smaller house. This isn't like this giant Playboy mansion, so tiny little suburban house. But they're letting it's full send on this party. These teens are getting fucking hectic, college age kids. She takes off a jacket, and it's an underwear party, we realize. I'm like, whoa, this house is full. Probably fire code, not great in terms of the shoulder-to-shoulder amount of people in here. But they're having a good time. Thoughts on house parties, house shows? Would you call this a house show, or are they just a band playing a party?
I'll say it's a house show for sure. I talk often about how my college experience was different. I didn't have like a campus. It was just a building that was shared with other companies, and I lived in a fucking house elsewhere. There's a part of me that's like, I wish I attended an underwear party when I was 20. It seems like a lot of fun.
Yes. There's a lot of really weird, like, college-aged theme parties that are problematic as hell.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like, hey, we're just going to go do the pool thing. It's like, works for me. Jimmy Eat World's going to be there. Even better. Great. Love this. How about this? Do 2000s kids like hanging Christmas lights up for non-Christmas reasons or what, Tom? Patios, house parties, porches, you name it. They hang those motherfuckers up frequently throughout the decade. Even, I think we talked about the Dangerous Summer recently. There's just Christmas lights fucking everywhere, man. The disease that is Brooklyn culture, I guess, just spread like wild. And I blame the Strokes, damn it. No.
I saw your porch the other day. You've got some lights up there.
Yeah,
so,
hey, Jesse wants them up, and they look good. I'm not saying they even look bad, but I was like, we have yet to find when it started. If you read that book, Meet Me in the Bathroom, kind of that rock revival, early 2000s in New York thing, they talk about just like Brooklyn happening and then people trying to like go where, I don't know, people love to be like, have lived in New York and be like, yeah, when I was there, it was tougher. Like, I don't care.
Yeah.
But people hanging Christmas lights to cover up, like, whatever. And,
Mold
and
on the
now
walls.
every burger bar in America hangs them while they serve you a nice cold IPA. And I'm not even shit talking any of this. I am that person. But even in the fucking middle music video, this party's got lights hung up. And I can feel that this bit is not landing. So we're going to move right along. Christmas lights, everybody. Am I right? Okay. Thoughts on drawing on people with markers at parties. A couple people have partied too hard. We find as we're kind of zooming around, we see a couple shots of the band, but mostly this house is full. Some people have passed out and there's marker on their skin. Thoughts?
I don't think I have ever seen that happen in real life. We've definitely, specifically remember my 13th or 14th birthday, whatever it would be in 8th grade, someone fell asleep and it might have even been you just smack someone in the face while they were sleeping, and that's led him to him kicking you through the drywall in the basement.
Don't blame me for something James did. This is, I feel like happens frequently because it's just you and me on the show, so you are in all the memories I have, and I'm in all the memories you have. Right. Was I there? I was there. But did I slap Steve personally? I wasn't the first one to. Wasn't the last one to, and I might not have even done it. I'm not saying I'm a saint.
I think what happened was James slapped him, but you were by Steve's feet, so he kicked you and put you through the drywall.
In Steve's defense, he was asleep, man. He's like, "What the? You couldn't have written on me with a marker?" Like, yeah. We didn't have a marker, I guess. I don't know who thought that was a good idea. It's weird. You kind of graduate from the hand in the water bowl thing, and then right around the markers. And I guess for us, it was slaps, jackass era, dumb idiot behavior. But yeah, you kind of like, I don't want to I'm not going to tattoo somebody. I'm good, actually. This is fun. Mostly because you don't want it coming back on you, right? It's like,
oh, for sure.
You learn pretty quick. You're like, you know what? Someone's going to tag me back. I don't want that shit. So it's not even worth the law. It's not even, it's just like, oh, it just feels too strange to me. I was never super in on the getting people out while they were asleep thing. After
me neither.
You try the hand in the water thing once, and then what if it works? What if your wildest dreams come true and it works? Like, you just have to deal with that situation.
And they just pissed on your living room couch. Now you got to sit there.
It's just not. It's like, oh, wait, we didn't think this out very well. But yes, so yeah, I think you and I can establish that. Not a huge fan. Let them sleep. Take their socks and shoes off or whatever. Make sure they have a blanket. Make sure they're hydrated. Maybe put an Advil, glass of water near them or whatever. Make sure they're okay. Take care of your friends, everybody. Okay.
Yep.
Here we are at the most important part of the video. Jim is like, hey, and sweat flies off his fucking everything. Thoughts on how sweaty Jim Adkins is in this video? Thoughts on you being, I don't want to poke fun. You are an impressively sweaty specimen. Thoughts on just living the life as a sweaty fella?
You know, I saw this YouTube video once that was like, here's the stereotypes of everyone you'll meet at the skate park. And one was the kind of older sweaty guy. And I was like, boom, found me. And like,
man down.
And if you watch on my Instagram, I'll post clips of me like trying to kickflip in slow motion. Every time that I like lean, I bend down. When I come back up, you will just see sweat dropping like rain in slow motion before I kickflip.
Looks pretty dope in slow motion though.
I don't know, dude. It's honestly horrifying. I remember like when my body was changing, like especially senior year of high school, I had to stuff my armpits with paper towels because I would have sweat marks like down to my waist. I got it from my dad. Right now it's 71 degrees in my house and I'm sweating. It's just like,
it's kind of one of those crazy things that maybe it should get talked about more, maybe it shouldn't, but like there was a former Browns player calling a preseason game recently, and they kept cutting to his shirt throughout the broadcast because it was one of the most preseason games are notoriously like they don't matter, they're practices basically. So the production crew, it was one of the more interesting running storylines of the evening was how sweaty this guy Joe Thomas was, and there was little shirt left to get wet by the end of the evening. He was owning it because he's always been kind of a bigger former offensive line guy, but some dudes just let it. I'm not saying Jim is this way. He's on the middle of a stage pouring his heart out, playing hard as singing, giving it all he's got. So this is peak physical activity for him. He's not just sitting there with a problematic resting heart rate or anything like that. But
and hey, if you look at the rest of the crowd, everyone is pretty
it's a pretty hot and heavy party, man.
Which makes for a good video, but apparently it was very hot that day. And with that many people in one room breaking fire code, it's going to get warm. It's going to get warm.
Codes. Shaking my damn head.
What were we watching with the Whitest Kids You Know, with Trevor Moore, where he was like, fireman, like he had a vendetta against firemen. Something Monday.
The movie Miss March,
yeah,
which was silly, but yeah, the fireman runner was hilarious. So it's interesting. We talk about Clarity being one of the OG emo records, and if you have a problem with that particular like title, feel free to tweet at the show. That's as far as I've come to understand it. I could be wrong. But coming off of Clarity, such an earnestly encouraging song coming from the band in a follow-up. We talk about the comeback thing a little bit, but thoughts, I mean, literally just like everything will be, but it's not the last time you hear it in the decade, right? Everything will be all right. Everything is all right. You hear from Ocean City just a few years later. So it's not like the genre shies away. Oh, go ahead.
Right. I remember you had an AIM away message that quoted every song you could think of that said everything is all right or everything will be okay.
Yeah, there was a running tally on, I think it was a MySpace blog technically, but I'm not going to fault you for, it would have been impossible to remember that particular detail. But no, you're right, yeah. Because it was so frequent that it's just like, wow, people must really need to hear this or something. But I think there was like a really late Hot Fuss track by the Killers with that same song title and everything like that. So I guess it's not that out of the blue, but it is kind of interesting.
And also, a lot of people credit this song's success to like people needing some positivity post 9/11.
Interesting.
Because it's so like, hey man, you're in a bad place, but it can get better. I don't know how much that would necessarily, I guess it would help it a lot because it was on the radio so much. People, I mean, I don't know. I was in 5th grade. I didn't even understand what happened, but like, I'm sure people need to hear encouraging stuff like that. Like think of the pandemic when it first started, everyone was like shooting off fireworks at 8 and howling out the window. And it was very like, we're in this together, I could see how this song could be an anthem for that. around that pretty, devastating time for the entire country.
Yes. I think we talk about how we ended up at the end of the decade liking the upsides a lot.
Oh, God.
I think on this show we try not to glorify the doom and gloom stuff too much. It's just kind of like was there and part of it, but I don't think we're like ever try to get like listeners or retweets off of the like isn't it fun to be sad shit. I think like
right.
if you listen to the show, some of the songs and stories and lead singers and bands we cling to are the storytellers who are like kind of explain themselves a little.
Yeah.
I think Motion City comes to mind, but Jimmy Eat World is not dissimilar, where it's just kind of like, okay, there's a song where it's pretty fucking angsty and like I'm not in a great spot, but there are days where I do feel all right, and here's kind of the nuance of all that and this and that, and you kind of like follow the band along and try to figure out how they're dealing with everything. And I think that's why we ended up liking the upsides later, and maybe this song in real time was, I don't know, you need it every once in a while, man. You can't dive. Well, as if someone on the pod who has mentioned several times, that you like music that makes you feel not great. Do you need that change of pace? I know. I literally made a MySpace blog as a young teen about it. Like, I don't really remember why. It just seemed to pop up a lot. So I was like, that's kind of like a lot of times for bands to use this exact phrase. But
right, I need some uplifting every now and then. I mean, there's a lot of songs and albums I go to specifically make me feel good. I don't think it's always I'm looking to get stabbed in the back by every memory I've ever had.
Right. So yeah, I think you and I more or less just end up clinging to the good storyteller, so to speak. But yeah, we already talked about kind of the comeback effort stuff. Let's introduce our protagonist of the video. And this is kind of when we might end up zipping through the second half of the video pretty quick because it's kind of a basic concept. But he is not in his underpants is the general thing. Can you walk me through a couple of his first few moves at the house party?
Yeah, I mean, he comes in. I think he quickly realizes, I've been watching Stranger Things lately. It's when they when they go to school as Ghostbusters and they realize they're the only ones dressed up for Halloween. I think I've been in that situation before. It's devastating when you do the thing differently than what everyone else is doing, but it's like the opposite of the stress dream where you're in your underwear and everyone else is clothed. And I think that's kind of what makes it fun is he's the only one in this room with clothes on and he's feeling pretty self-conscious. And I love the how backwards that is.
Yes. Yeah. He goes to the fridge to grab a beer. Maybe he can get some social lubricant. There's two people in the fridge in their underpants making out.
With lights, Christmas lights in the fridge.
Christmas lights fucking everywhere, man. Fucking Brooklyn. And, the guy is making out and multitasking, takes the cap off, allegedly, and hands him an open beer.
Dude, that was so funny.
Accepts it.
Which, by the way, did you know that the original time machine for Back to the Future was supposed to be a refrigerator, but they were concerned that kids would get hurt trying to climb into the refrigerator, so they changed it to a car?
They probably would have, Tom. They probably would have. We're seeing some frosted tips. We're seeing some bucket hats, like we mentioned. The dream of the 90s is not dead yet. Like we were all there. It wasn't dead yet. It rarely is. Decades don't just end on the zero and then everyone starts dressing differently. Obviously, there's like ebbs and flows to everything. But here's something I noticed. People who live in music videos own pools at a way monstrously higher clip than any other art form, and it's not close. Everyone in a music video has a fucking pool. And I don't know what to do with this information other than just acknowledge it and accept it, I guess.
And let's zip on by.
Yeah, here you go. He's not in the pool, naked, still's got some clothes on. He keeps finding people kissing. He is opening closets to try to find a place to maybe down a beer. That scene in high school teen party movies where they go into the bathroom and chug something to be like, try to, get their game face on. But every door he opens reveals another couple who's in the throes of a pretty heated makeout session.
Yeah, poor guy.
He's just in his new puka shell necklace trying to vibe, man. And he is just not finding his place.
Amazing.
Anyway, towards the end of the video, again, pretty simple storyline, but like you can see why Jimmy Eat World might have been hesitant at first. But the last 30 seconds are pretty important. He finds an empty room finally to kind of take a few sips of his beer nervously and start undressing to prepare to kind of conform. And he finds a girl who is in the same boat, and they are like, you know what, this, and they put their clothes on and they both exit the party. Arm in arm.
Hand in each other's pockets.
Pretty nice.
I
pretty
think
nice
it's
high school
nice.
dating move. Hand in the pockets.
I think it's nice. Like, you don't have to conform. maybe those people were having fun, and that's okay that they're having fun in their own way. But if, you don't have to conform to find what you're looking for. And I think I was wondering, is there going to be a greater point? Because if not, this is a pretty blatant, I mean, even the thumbnail is like Jim Adkins and a girl in red underwear in the back dancing, glistening, like, come on. But like when that last frame happens, you're like, oh, that's nice. Like, this is a nice little, it's almost a love story hidden in a sweaty half naked dance party. And
yeah, what I kind of like about it is nice. And I'll share one more thought, I guess, is if you look at some of like early performances or early interviews where they're all skinny and young, or not that they're fat now, they're still skinny. I don't know why I said that, but it's just them doing what they do in every YouTube video of them as a young band, which is not acknowledging anything except how fucking hard they're playing. You know what I mean? Like, credit where credit's due. They are just in that house, not looking up or around. They got blinders on. They are there to deliver. Like,
yeah,
they are almost possessed with how pissed off they are that clarity didn't work out. And this is just me putting, speculating wildly. We haven't listened to hours of interviews or anything, obviously, but it's just kind of just like, this is our shot. So head down. This is what Jimmy Eat World does. They can put us in a music video with bikinis, but I'm not going to look at them. I am just going to look at my fucking frets and just rip it up and lay down a pretty fucking gnarly solo in the middle of a pop song, one of the biggest pop songs of the early 2000s. So, and they went to work and, it was fabulous, Tom. What do you think? I mean, I don't know. It was kind of a gift.
Yeah, I mean, there's a huge part of me that wishes I had a much stronger emotional reaction to this band because I don't know if I've said it yet, Pat. They're a really good band. I just like...
They are... it's weird because, there's that phrase, better late than never, but when you do a music podcast that you need to tie memories to music to like... justify the episodes. I do have some, but my relationship with this band was definitely later in life with the help of others in a pretty major way. But then you look back, I'm not sure I would have enjoyed some of the stuff as much as an 11-year-old, maybe as a sophomore in high school or something, but that still would have been pretty late to this record in general. But just kind of be glad you found it, I guess. And was definitely aware of the song at the time, but there was more to that story, and I'm glad we are learning bits and pieces on step one of our multi-step journey to earn your respect back in terms of discussing Jimmy Eat World on the show. So this wasn't necessarily a white whale episode, but we wanted to lay something down just to say that, like, hey, look, we like Jimmy Eat World. All right? We like them. So, but obviously, low-hanging fruit, the middle is amazing. We're not breaking much ground here, but we were just young enough to like really miss the boat a little bit on this band, and I'm glad we didn't miss it entirely. I'll say that.
Yeah, it's worth having around. I would like to have some experiences that are tied to these songs to make me like gravitate a little bit more towards it. But I'm never unhappy when I hear it. I could say that, but I would like to be reaching out for it a little more because I think it deserves it.
Let's do this. Let's do Songs of the Week.
Sure.
I haven't really listened to it yet. There's much to do. The week we recorded this, Certified Lover Boy came out. I listened to Love All featuring Jay-Z by Drake, of course, and pretty good. Haven't really dug in. Don't have many thoughts. It's only been out for a little while, but that's my Song of the Week this week.
Nice. I just discovered Meet Me at the Altar from a Reddit thread a couple days ago, and the song Feel a Thing, the opening track off of their new EP Model Citizen, is like one of the greatest things I've ever heard in my life. It's like a all-female bands or all non-guy band, like easy core vibes. It's absolutely incredible. Not many people are doing easy core these days, especially this.
You even texted me. You were pretty freaking hyped about this band.
I texted everyone. Like, you've got to listen to this. It's totally blowing me away right now. The whole EP is really good, but the opening song, Feel a Thing, is like insanity. I love it.
Nice. That's about it for this week, everybody. Kept it tight, but thanks for being here. On to the post show.
Yep. Thank you all. Love you.
We love you.
Bye. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. Please hit us up on Twitter @_reminiscentfm and let us know how good of a job we did on the Jimmy Eat World episode this week. We totally bungled the Futures episode, but we're on our way to redeeming ourselves. They're a good band. Yeah, hit us up on Twitter @_reminiscentfm. The best part of the show is talking to you all day, every day, it feels like, and that's just the best. We love you all so much, and we'll talk to you next week on episode 250. Bye, everyone.